Yes, my name is Hailey Schnaath. It's Hayleyschnaath.
And what is your title?
I'm the park specialist here at Bennett Springs State Park.
Excellent. And tell us what you do here at the park.
So my main duty is running the campground. So I oversee all of our campground hosts. We can have up to 16 campground hosts at a time. We have a pretty big campground, 186 sites, so we make sure that everything runs smoothly and that visitors are having a good experience. On top of that, I do some administration work in the office. Right now, I'm coordinating our special event for October 5th, our 100th anniversary celebration. And I also do some interpretive programs here in the Nature Center. Usually, I do historical programs.
Excellent. What do you enjoy most about working at Bennett Spring?
I like the variety, and I like that I get to get out of the office quite a bit. So we do rounds around the park. We just make sure that, things are running smoothly, operating as they should. If people have questions, we answer questions. We make sure that, people are following the rules and things like that as well. Yes, so we're celebrating 100 years as a park. Missouri State Parks the state acquired the land for Bennett Springs State Park in December of 1924. So that's when the first 8.5 acres were sold to the state, and then a lot more the next year. So we are 100 years old this year, and we're having a really big festival to celebrate it. So we're having a lot of festivities. Kind of look at my notes here. We have live music. We're having 3 different musicians play throughout the day on October 5th, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. We're having historical demonstrations. So our 100th anniversary it lets us get in touch with our history as a park. So we're having historical demonstrations like Dutch oven cooking. We're also having some artisan craftsmen out here who will be selling their goods, but also demonstrating, like basket weaving and then fiber arts, spinning, things like that. So kind of getting in touch with those old crafts. We're also having a CCC reenactment, so you'll get to see what the Civilian Conservation Corps tents and camps looked like. So make sure that you come out and you can kind of like read all about our history and what we're doing in the park. We're also going to have a car show. That's going to be down in Zone 1. So the Lebanon-Laclede County Route 66 Society is going to bring out a collection of classic cars, and we'll be able to see those down in Zone 1. And we're also having lots of food trucks. So we've got like a taco truck lined up. We've got a barbecue truck, lemonade, cotton candy, and we have a vendor who's going to do burgers and dogs and also fish fry. So we're going to have a little bit of everything. It's a really big deal for us.
Can you tell us about maybe the early years of this area and maybe include some of the prehistory?
Yeah. So obviously, there have been people here for thousands of years, in and out of the area. There were Native Americans, and there have been artifacts found in what is now the park. There weren't really permanent villages that we found evidence for, but rather temporary camps. So this is obviously a very attractive area with lots of natural resources. So obviously the spring, it's huge. It pumps out 100 million gallons of water a day. So this would have been a fantastic resource for people to come utilize. The water also draws game. So, you've got your deer, turkey, all kinds of things that people can utilize for food and hunt. So Native American hunting camps would be around here to hunt the game. And then obviously, the resources around here drew settlers in the early settlement period. So not only do you have water and you've got animals, but you also have timber everywhere to build with. So that's what the early folks were coming out here for. So once the Osage left the area, due to treaties. This left the way clear for settlers to come in. So the settler for whom the town was named was James Bryce. He came to the area in 1837 and he bought all the land kind of around the spring. And so it was originally known as Bryce Spring, and the town of Bryce sprang up. And so this town lasted from the 1800s up till about 1930, mid 30s. And this was the town that was in the park. And so you kind of think of like this old little town built on milling. So Bryce had a mill on the Spring Branch. Obviously, that water is rushing to the Niangua River and it's pretty strong current, so it could push a water wheel to power a mill. And there were several mills actually along the Spring Branch and out at the confluence with the Niangua. So you had the Bryce's mill. You also had Bennett's mill. Bennett was another early family who came here, and their mill was out at the confluence. So you've got different mills operating in the area, and farmers from the area could bring their grain in and get it ground. And while they were waiting for this grain to be ground, they were relaxing. And this is a beautiful place to relax. So it started to be known as a recreational area as well. So your farmers would come here, they'd be waiting, and they would just camp out. They might fish as well. So trout began to be stocked into the spring or into the Spring Branch starting in 1900. So pretty early on, trout fishing was a thing here. And it's kind of bloomed from there. The hatchery was created in 1923, and so people have been coming out for that for a while. But behind me, you will see some of the inner workings of a mill, and that's because it was so important to this community in its early years. So that's a little bit about the history. Yeah, before the Osage, we believe that there were some mound builders. I know that mounds have been found in the area, but I think a lot more research needs to be done about that.
Very good.
You have the town of Bryce. It was kind of in its heyday around 1920. So just think of this little town, it's got the Bryce Inn for people to come in and stay while they're visiting the area. You've got the mill, you've got a hardware store, like a couple different general stores. You've got a blacksmith shop. So it's just this little town. And then in the 1930s, after this was already a park, that's when the CCC came in. So they were stationed right next to the town of Bryce. So you can kind of think of that time period when you have the locals and the CCC men kind of coexisting in this place. And I kind of like to think about the conversations they may have had with each other and if there was any tensions there. But yeah, so the CCC was Company 1772, and they were a veterans company for the CCC. So these were older men, like think 30s and 40s, who were actually veterans from World War I. And that's the group that was here in the park. And they built quite a bit. So the beautiful CCC bridge right down the hill from where we are that crosses over to the hatchery area, that big stone bridge was built by the CCC. The dining lodge, the gauge house as well, and culverts. They built trails, they fought wildfires, they made the original road out here in front of the nature center. So, they laid like sewer pipes, so you name it, they had a hand in it. They really made our park look like what we see today. So when we think of Bennett Spring today, we're going to think of a lot of these stone structures that the CCC built. The stone was all native stone taken from this area. There are quarries from inside the park and also down on Highway 32. So they were wanting this architecture to look like it fit in with the state park, or with the land, rather. Probably my favorite location in the park is the old CCC barracks. So it's the only CCC building where they lived that's still there. So you can kind of see that over near the hatchery. And then I also love the gauge house. It kind of just looks like this little castle right next to the spring, but that is where equipment is housed that gauges the water flow coming from the spring. So it serves a pretty important function as well.
Kind of give us maybe some of those landmarks down the spring.
Yeah, sure. So zone one runs from the spring all the way to the dam, that kind of spillway there that you see as you cross over the bridge. And then from the dam down to the Whistle Bridge is zone two. The Whistle Bridge is just kind of a low bridge with whistles underneath where the water runs through. And then from the Whistle Bridge down to the confluence of the Niangua, that's zone three. So different baits are allowed to be used for fishing in the different zones. So the natural tunnel is another feature of our park. It's a long natural tunnel through stone. A lot of times you can find bats hanging out up on the ceiling if you hike out there. It is a little bit of a more strenuous hike. It's a 7 miler. So if you hike out to it, you will have to hike the whole 7 miles. So there's no way to cut that one short, but it's really beautiful once you make it out there to the natural tunnel.
Where you were in the middle of a construction project, could you describe that for us?
Yeah, so the hatchery, so that is the Missouri Department of Conservation, they're actually doing a $40 million renovation of the hatchery. So we kind of think about the different developments that happened in the park in the early years. Like think about the CCC building in the 1930s, and I kind of think of this the same way. So we're gonna have something much better once it's finished. And it's going to take a good 2 years. So we've got a good year left for MDC to finish up on their project. And as far as we go, the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, we currently have a splash pad project going on right now. So that is going to be something really fun, something free as well for people to be able to bring their kids to once that finishes. And that'll be ready to go next season.
So who are some of the people that stand out that represent our park?
Yeah, so I like to think about some of the families. I like to think of them as the first families of Bennett. So you've got the Bryces, who started the milling operations down here. And then you've got the Bennetts, who were also millers. And one of the Bryces married one of the Bennetts. So they're both from these milling families and they continue milling. So that was Peter and Anna Bennett. And so they kind of inherited all that land from James Bryce and passed it down to the Bennett children. So the two Bennett children that I think of most when I think of the town of Bryce and the founding of, Bennett Springs State Park is going to be William Sherman Bennett and Josephine Bennett. Josephine Bennett led the way in selling 8.5 acres to the state in 1924. And so her land included land that is now down in the hatchery area. She actually ran a inn, the Bryce Inn. She did that for something like 25, 30 years. And she raised geese. So she seems like a pretty interesting person to me. Her brother, William Sherman Bennett, ended up selling over 500 acres to the state the next year in 1925. And so that was the land that actually included the spring. So that's kind of how it got its current name, Bennett Spring. And yeah, William Sherman Bennett did a lot of different things in the town. Well, first of all, he ended up marrying a preacher's daughter, and they had a lot to do with the spiritual life of Bryce. So Louis Bolds Bennett, who married William Sherman, was from a preaching family, and she herself was a preacher. And so she preached throughout her time here, and William Sherman Bennett also preached, and their children all preached, and there were baptisms in the spring for years, revivals in this area for years. And when William Sherman Bennett sold the land to the state, he held back 1 acre of land to donate it as land for a church. And a church was built on that property, and that's the Bennett Spring Church of God that's still it's not technically in the park, it's its own piece of land, but you can still see it from the park today. And it's the only building that's left from the town of Bryce.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
I can't tell
thank you.
I may have a follow-up question. I can give you a call or something or email.
Okay,
But
sure,
thank
yeah.
you so much for your time.
Yeah, if there's anything I need to clarify, just let
Yeah.
me know.